a beverage or two, and settle in. This is the Morning Tailgate on RaiderNation Radio 920, the flagship for the Silver and Black. Vince Sapienza, Vinny Bonsignor, Clay Baker coming to you live from Las Vegas here on a Tuesday, August 25th, 2026. Just a couple days removed from the preseason finale for the Raiders taking on the San Francisco 49ers inside Allegiant Stadium. We continue to cover and talk about and have a conversation regarding the fallout to the injury that is to Ashton Jeanty from Sunday, what it means moving forward. We'll bring you the latest as it becomes available. But practice continued. As we've talked about, it is a moving train in the National Football League. Practice continued. Guys kept working. And the improvements, hopefully in terms of the Raiders' sake, were had. I do want to start the show. We're going to get to the football and the Raiders and things of that nature. First of all, good morning, gentlemen. Vinny, Clay, good morning. Before we get to the football, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the event that took place yesterday morning at Allegiant Stadium. I know JT touched on it as well as Q on unnecessary roughness yesterday, but being at that event yesterday, $25 million donated to create and help build the first standalone children's hospital in the state of Nevada. I cannot emphasize enough, or you can't understate it, what a massive deal, commitment that is from the Raiders. And you don't get something like that if the Raiders, the NFL, are not here in Las Vegas. So for all the times that in whatever capacity, whether it was here or my TV gig where, you know, we ran the bite of Mark Davis saying, you know, telling Las Vegas, going to all those authority meetings and things of that nature, sitting there saying, you know, you're not just getting a football team, you're getting an army, you're getting the Raider Nation, you are getting a community partner. As someone who sat in there and listened to some of the heartbreaking testimonials from parents yesterday and heard those testimonials about parents having to take their young kids to a different state, drive 6 hours, fly, hotels, etc., because there was nothing here in this state. And to hear it in real time and see the emotion, incredible what this is going to do moving forward for not only the city, but the state as well. And so, you know, hats off to Mark Davis, Egon Durbin, Michael Meldman, and the entire Raiders organization, because $10 million from the organization, $5 million each from those individuals is no small footnote, right? Like that is a major thing. And Clay, you could probably speak to this better than any of us here. You know, they were talking about, you know, Bill Hornbuckle and his wife were talking about this is something that the state has been trying to get for decades, not years, decades. And it is now finally happening in part to the Raiders. And again, so much good from yesterday's announcement.
Yeah, and this is a milestone for Southern Nevada, because other times there would be children's hospitals, and there are others, but they're connected with other massive systems.
Right.
And so they're just a part of the overall cog in the wheel. This one will be a standalone children's hospital. This will be something which major cities all have, except for Las Vegas, and now this is a step towards that. That's a major hit.
I just, again, we're going to get to the football stuff, but I just could not say something about how cool of a moment that was yesterday when they said, you know, we got a game-changing type gift. You know, they're kind of on the press release. It's like, okay, what do we, and then you get there and you're like,
it's a big deal.
Wow. Just an absolute wow moment. Ground's supposed to break on the hospital later this fall, supposed to fully open by 2030. So again,
great.
We still got some time, but things are happening. The ball is rolling. And so, again, hats off to the Raiders, to Mark Davis, to everyone involved. It was a tremendous event yesterday. Very cool to be part of it, and good on Raider Nation. It just, again, shows you, we talk about, you know, how much good there is for the alumni. We got our Once a Raider, Always a Raider tomorrow. We talk about the alumni all the time, how the organization wraps their arms around their own. Well, Las Vegas is their own now. Right, like, and they are doing just that, and fantastic stuff. So, Vinny, just I wanted to start the show that way. Good morning. Start with the not just good, really good stuff coming out of the organization moving forward. Hopefully some good on the field will translate in the regular season.
Well, as somebody who I go way back on, with the Raiders' potential move, whether it was at first to Los Angeles, and there were other markets that I go back on the story a long time.
Yeah.
It all worked out, and they ended up in Las Vegas. But wherever they were going to end up, and I have had conversations with Mark Davis about this, pretty much every step of the way, and everyone else that was in the organization that was part of whatever move that they were going to ultimately make. And the sincerest promise that they always expressed was, we're not going someplace just to be there. Wherever we go, whether it's staying here in the Bay Area, moving to Los Angeles, and obviously ultimately moving to Las Vegas, their goal was to be great neighbors, not just takers but givers, and being a part of the community. And that was always stressed. And I know, I wrote that story and, expressed those comments. And I would always you always kind of sense the rolling of the eyes. Sure, this is what they're saying. Oh, right, sure. That's just, they're trying to, paint a great picture. And I would try to, sometimes at the expense of, people saying things to me and about me and what all. And I would say, no, I'm taking them at their word. Like, I'm literally relaying what they're saying, and I have been around. I could sometimes tell, who's being sincere and who's not being sincere. And I always felt that Mark Davis and the Raider organization was the epitome of sincere when they expressed those sentiments. Like, we're not just coming here because this is the open market and we're going to take when we get here and not care about anything when we get here. It's the opposite of what we want to do. We want to be part of the landscape, and a big part of that landscape, and open our arms to this neighborhood because they're going to be opening their arms to us. And so, whether it's this, which was an enormous, obviously, achievement and a great commitment that they showed to the Children's Hospital. And there's been all sorts of things that the Raiders have done since getting to Las Vegas, since getting to Nevada, that has shown exactly where their heart is and why they haven't just said they want to be good neighbors, but they've been great neighbors and a great asset to Southern Nevada, the entire state of Nevada, obviously Las Vegas. So this is the latest sign or expression of their commitment to be a great neighbor. And so hats off to the Raiders organization. This isn't a small thing whatsoever. They don't have to do any of these things. They got their money from, the state, and they got their stadium, and everything's great in that way. And, obviously they want to win on the field. But it's so much more to that when you bring something like the Raiders, like that brand, like the NFL to a region. And they keep doing it really on a daily basis. And this is, like I said, enormous, but it's just the latest in a long line of great things that the Raiders have done since getting to Vegas.
The latest and the largest philanthropic commitment made in the organization's history. Think about that for a second. As much, and you just detailed it beautifully, as much as they've done throughout their history of giving back to whatever community they're in, Oakland, L.A., Las Vegas, right? This is the largest philanthropic commitment they've ever made. So, again, no small footnote. Mark Davis, the ownership group, and the organization have delivered on everything they said when they first got here in terms of that, in terms of being a good neighbor, in terms of giving back, in terms of building a world-class stadium that's going to bring all these big-time events. Now the last piece of the puzzle is on the field. And that feels like that is on the up as well as we continue to have that discussion. Now, some notable things while that was going on, practice was getting set to get underway yesterday. Just some quick little notes from practice. Jackson Powers-Johnson, once again a participant, rotating with Caleb Rogers. We saw Mike Washington Jr. got most of the run with the Wolves with the absence of one Ashton Jeanty. The wide receivers kind of mixing it up with the ones and twos. I don't know if that's more of a message to the wide receivers to get more reps or to get some familiarity with Fernando Mendoza, or both. But that's what took place yesterday. Also, Trey Zune getting some work with Fernando Mendoza at center. So a guy who's played all around the offensive line, getting a little work with Mendoza at center. And Treydan Stukes, kind of the, I don't want to say late blooming, but late training camp blooming or on the ascent up, taking most, if not all, the run with the ones on the first team defense on Monday's practice. So those are some of the notes as we are just a couple days away from the preseason finale. Vinny, and before we keep going, Ashton Jeanty continues to be the topic, not just here in Las Vegas, but nationally as well. So much so that I guess it's ESPN's now, NFL networks, all the above. Ian Rappaport had the latest here on Ashton Jeanty this morning.
Well, I feel like the Las Vegas Raiders really had to recover themselves first. There was some tense hours in the Las Vegas Raiders building, and Ashton Jeanty went down. You hear the description from practice, players kneeling in prayer, thinking it was a major injury, having to be helped off the field. I mean, immediately you hear all that and you think, this is not going to be good. Could this be a season-ending thing? It's nothing like that. My understanding, this is something I reported with colleague Adam Schefter over the weekend, is that it's an ankle sprain believed to be more low than high and not considered to be a major injury. But it is a real injury, Mike, and the reality is there is a chance that Ashton Jeanty may not be on the field for week one. They are hopeful that he will be, but there is a chance that he won't be, which certainly does mean a couple things. One, it's not the season-ending situation that I think some were scared about. And two, they're going to see a backup running back that they actually like a lot, and that might not be a bad thing either.
So that's Ian Rappaport reporting this morning. Takeaways there. Week one up in the air for Ashton Jeanty. It is not the quote-unquote dreaded high ankle sprain that many athletes do not wish upon many people. It is just a normal ankle sprain. But again, this is a guy, as we talked about on Monday, Vinny, that caution is one of those things you need to take because of the importance. But also, I don't know how long the Raiders don't want to be having him in the lineup as well. So, again, nothing official from the team. Clint Kubiak is expected, is set to meet with the media today after practice. So we will bring that to you when we get it. But, again, feels like the bullet has been dodged for now as we continue with the cautious optimism regarding Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah, and with roster cutdowns coming, on the 31st, you're gonna get your answers to some extent on what they're dealing with, on whether or not he has to go on IR. Remember, you get 2 spots now before you set the 50-man roster. That doesn't affect having to put something through waivers and all that kind of nonsense that you've had to do in the past. You get 2 roster spots before it gets to the 53-man, roster decisions that you can put on IR ahead of setting your 53-man roster. And those 2 players, if there are 2 or just 1 or none, quite honestly, we'll see, can get brought back within 4 weeks. Right? You could do that later on too. I'm not saying that you can't do that after the 53-man roster is set, but now a relatively new rule is you can use two or put 2 players. Preceding that 53-man roster on IR that you can bring back in 4 weeks. If he goes on that IR, he has to miss 4 weeks too. So there's that, which would lend you to believe, okay, it's a little bit more serious. So they're going to really take their time, and they don't want to use one of the 53-man roster spots on somebody that they think could be out for 4 weeks, right? If he doesn't go on IR, which everyone is knocking on wood that doesn't happen, then that tells you that it could be a week-to-week thing. He could be ready for week 1. Maybe it's week 2. Maybe it's week 3. They feel like he's going to be back sooner than that 4-week mandatory miss that you have to miss if you go on IR. And obviously that would be everybody's preference. And then you're not necessarily, he just wouldn't dress out for games. For the games that he can't play. Hopefully it's for week 1 that he is out there, but if not, week 2 or week 3. So we'll see. It's coming up. August 31st is the day that all of that goes down. So I think at that point we're going to have the most clarity that we're going to have on where all this stands.
Really good outline there, Vinny, because the calendar is starting to become important, right? Especially when you look at this roster and the organizational moves that need to be made as they continue to look around the league as to what those cuts look like elsewhere. And being number 1 on the waiver wire claim order, the Raiders have their druthers, right, in terms of how they go about it. So it's one of those things as we sit there and wait for the deadline of cut down day, and it's like, okay, there's your team. It's like, well, especially this year with the Raiders, that is not, don't count your eggs just yet, right? Like there's going to be seemingly feels like there's going to be a lot of movement even in the hours past that as the first 24-hour wave continues to go.
And this is where Mike Washington becomes so important, because if you have to, let's say you have to put Ashton on the IR, and you feel like, okay, it's going to be a 4-week thing, maybe a 5-week thing, having to get him back and all that kind of stuff. The last thing you really want to do right now if you're the Raiders, because I think you feel pretty good about your running back position or group when you do have Ashton Jeanty there, is have to use a valuable waiver wire slot, which they have number 1 to start out. That's not indefinite. Like you don't, like throughout training or throughout those cuts, you don't have the first pick over and over and over again. You get to kind of use it one time, and then you go to the back of the line. It's just like this whole ordeal. I think the last thing the Raiders would want to be in a position to do is have to use that first pick on a running back when they really do feel good about that running back position right now. And that's again where Mike Washington comes into play. Because they're like, we don't need to use a first, a high waiver wire claim, because we feel good about Mike Washington. He's going to be able to hold down the fort for whatever duration that Ashton is not in there. Why is that important? Because now you could use that waiver wire spot on a real position of need. Maybe it's at wide receiver. Maybe it's the offensive line. Maybe it's the interior of the defensive line. So, I think everybody's keeping their fingers crossed that this isn't going to be something that's a real long-term thing, that they would feel compelled to have to use that, a precious spot on the waiver wire claim, order to address that position. And that's where Mike becomes so important, because I think he's pretty much given a lot of people some confidence that in the event that Ashton goes down, we got a guy in Mike Washington that we feel, and Dylan Laube as that pass catcher out of the backfield, we feel like we have that pretty well covered.
Yeah, I'm pretty cautiously optimistic from what I've seen. Right, I'm not in the building. I don't get a say in the decision, but from what I've seen and what it looks like, I would be cautiously optimistic if I'm Raider Nation in terms of, again, short term. Early on, getting the ball and rolling.
And there's no need to rush Ashton Jeanty.
Well, I don't think you can afford to. That's the other thing.
That would be irresponsible, and they're not going to. I'm just saying, like however long it takes, you take that time. He's way too valuable for a couple of games. If hopefully he's ready. I mean, that's and I don't know that he is or isn't or will or won't. I'm just saying that if there's even any kind of hesitation, you just err on the side of caution. He's too valuable, and I'm not saying that this is absolutely 1,000% not meaningful season for the Raiders. It absolutely is, but there's a long range thing here, on a long plan here, and I think appreciating that process and honoring that process. We've talked so much about don't skip steps. You can't skip steps. You have to appreciate and honor every step along the way to get really where you want to go. And so this is one of those situations where you don't skip steps on this. You take as long as it's needed for Ashton Jeanty, and because he's just too big of a commodity, too important of a piece moving forward.
And at the same time, the value for Mike Washington Jr. goes up to the point where I don't think you see him on Thursday against the 49ers. I mean, especially when you have other guys you maybe would like to take a look at right now, Agumba Wale, Roman Hemby, and see what this running back room can do with Dylan Laube for Thursday against the Niners.
Yeah, that provides a fascinating question of how Clint Kubiak uses the personnel available to him, who he's looking to continue to evaluate, how much of quote-unquote starters, even twos at certain positions that you're like, a little bit thin at the top. Let's take a break. Let's wait for week one. 702-365.
And I think Mike Washington has earned that. Like, I'm not saying that everybody on the roster has earned that, though. I'll tell you that right now. Like, there's some guys that are looking at Thursday where they probably shouldn't be playing, that might play because they haven't done what they needed to do to kind of secure that. Hey, you've earned the right to go sit over there in in bubble wrap and watch this last preseason game by the work that you've put in and by what you've shown us. I don't know that everybody that I would think that there's probably some surprise people in the other category that may have to go out there and play on Thursday because they just haven't stepped up the way they need to step up yet.
702-365-9200 is the number. The question that will lay at your feet, Raider Nation, here on a Tuesday. When you look ahead to preseason finale on Thursday, preseason game number 3, where is the area of concern most as it stands today? Is it the run game in totality, what it might look like, sans Ashton Jeanty early, the continued competition at right guard? Is it the wide receiver room that Clint Kubiak said took a step back last week, needs more out of? Or is it the secondary? Is it that youthful exuberance that we've seen in the silver and black secondary? Of those three, how would you rank your area of concern as it stands today? Again, we have a little less than 3 weeks till that first regular season game, so plenty of time to fix any issues until then, maybe. But what is your area of concern? What are you most worried about today? Is it the run game, the wide receiver room, or the secondary? And if you really want to play your own game, I guess you can choose a bonus option. But those are the three that we are looking at today, having the discussion. We're going to hear from Tyler Linderbaum. Later today, we're going to hear from Rob Leonard. Later today, we want to hear from you. Jesse Merrick of the Silver and Black Sports Network joins us from in hour number 2. Ryan McFadden of ESPN, hour number 3. It's the Morning Tailgate, Raider Nation Radio 920. But first...
Hey guys, are you craving real Mexican food that's been doing it right for generations? Then it's time for Sal's Mexican Restaurant, a Central Valley tradition since 1942. We're talking about the kind of food that keeps people coming back. Stacked burritos, sizzling fajitas, legendary enchiladas, and those award-winning tamales that everybody's talking about. And here's the best part. Whether you're in Selma, Madera, or Fresno, Sal's has a location for you. Plus, Raider Nation, listen up. Games are about ready to start happening in a big and major way. Sal's, whether it's game night, fight night, UFC, soccer, whatever the case might be, it's your spot. It's your go-to spot. But if you can't make it in, no problem. You can get Sal's delivered straight to your door wherever you are. Just go to salsmexicanrestaurant.com. That's salsmexicanrestaurant.com and place your order right now. They'll deliver it to you wherever you are. Don't wait. Don't settle. Sal's Mexican Restaurant. Tradition, flavor, and Raider pride. Served up fresh every single day.
Speedy comes from a background that he's got a dog in him, and he's going to have to put that dog out there on display and get the coach off his back. The whole receiver room should be like, man, let's get off my back. If I'm Trey Tucker, man, I'm like, there's a lot of money out here to be made. I need to be in every rep. I need to be a leader. I don't think Trey Tucker's a number one. He's not a one receiver to me personally. Maybe other people are like, he's not a number one. So if you're a number 2 or slot guy, then you need to go out there and be the best that you can be.
Welcome back inside the Morning Tailgate, Raider Nation Radio 920. That was Mark McMillan joining us on a Monday, talking about the wide receiver room being a bit of a concern for him as the Raiders move forward, following the Clint Kubiak comments of that position group taking a step back the week of Houston. Not to say that they can't take a step forward, but they're still looking for somebody to emerge, be accountable, help them on Sunday. Still looking for that. 702-365-9200. Want to take your calls, want to get to some of your texts. How would you rank your areas of concern at this present moment? Is it the wide receiver room? Is it the run game in general between the offensive line, the injury to Ashton Jeanty, or is it that young secondary on defense, still waiting to see what that looks like when the bullets really do start to fly? 702-365-9200. And Vinny, it's, as we ask these questions, we're okay to ask these questions now because seemingly there's time to, change our opinion on them. We got another practice today. We got a preseason game on Thursday. We got another week of work next week before the regular season. But as we talked about at the top of the hour, the calendar is what the calendar is, and you only have so many opportunities to adjust, quote unquote, improve your roster with roster cut down day and what happens around the rest of the league. But there's a lot of questions now surrounding the team as we inch closer to the regular season.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you should mention that because earlier you were talking about Treydan Stukes and you were talking about the late move, and which is late in training camp for sure.
Late in the race, yeah.
Yeah, but here's the thing. The reality is this is just starting. It really is. Training camp was just one segment of this. This is all about improving throughout the course of the season. So when you take a guy like Treydan Stukes, and we'll get to the wide receiver room as well, Treydan, and I would also say I would throw Massis and McCoy in there as well, because all three of those guys, to me, have taken steps in the right direction throughout training camp, and that's just throughout training camp. Imagine, hopefully, and I expect this to be the case, what that's going to look like during the regular season, and that's, to me, that's the It's what this season really truly is all about. It's laying that foundation, and it's a whole bunch of young players moving in the right direction so that by the end of the season you could look throughout the course of the season and see all the markers that they hit and where they ended up, what they look like at the end of the season, and saying, wow, there's a bright future here with a bunch of these young players. So And I'm not pointing my finger at you. It was kind of humorous to me to hear how we declare this, like, as if it's all kind of coming together and it has to happen right now. And at the end of training, no, this is really literally just the beginning, and we have to look at that. We have to look at this season as that. So in terms of the wide receivers, I'm on record. It's been an issue for me going all the way back. That's why I had a wide receiver mocked to them in the second round. They didn't take a wide receiver in the second round. I know they really liked Stribling from Ole Miss. He went at the top of the second round to the San Francisco 49ers, who traded up to go get him. People were like, why would the 49ers do that? Go look at what Stribling's doing right now. The Raiders, had an eye on a really good young talent, and I'm not to say that I'm not sitting here saying that they would have drafted him there if he had been available, but who knows? Let's just put that out there. They know that they need a wide receiver. They know that they need to address that position. But things happen in the draft, number one. Number two, they had so many other needs that you can't just say, well, we got to get this. There were a whole bunch of other needs, including rebuilding a young secondary, bringing an offensive line, obviously drafting Fernando Mendoza. So the point, the long and the short of all that is, you're just not going to be able to check off all the boxes. We've said that, and for the longest. They'll bring their wide receiver or wide receivers in, as time goes on. It might not happen this year, and then you just have to make do with what you have right now. And Mark brought up a really good point. There's a lot of money to be had, and it is kind of conspicuous a little bit to me, and I've done some poking around on this, that Trey Tucker, he's in the last year of his contract. Normally in these situations, if you've solidified yourself, teams are usually locking you up at this point. They haven't, right? That just is the fact of the matter. So what does he have to show them? What has to happen for him to earn another go around here? I guess this season is going to be all about that for Trey Tucker, whether it's here or earning a contract someplace else as well.
Yeah, let's park the Trey Tucker contract stuff because there's a lot of time to talk about that. I want to go back to what you were talking about with the secondary, right? And sometimes I feel, I'll speak for myself, when I speak about Fernando Mendoza and running his own race, that goes for all the rookies, right? But when we were talking about Fernando Mendoza, it's obviously specialized. It's obviously the quarterback. It's obviously the guy that has his fingertips on everything. Treydan Stukes, I don't want to make. I want to make sure that it doesn't seem like, oh, he's a late bloomer. That was not the intent of what I meant. No, but he was running his own race, and in terms of getting to where he is now. Like I remember prior to training camp, I was one of the first ones loudly saying, I think Treydan Stukes is going to be the MVP of training camp because of his mature nature, because of his college resume. I think he's going to come in and make an immediate impact. Well, that's kind of been a slow build in terms of the macro look of it. He was running with the twos for the majority.
Very macro.
Very macro. He was running with the majority. He was running with the twos for most all of training camp up until this last week. He's really got in run with the ones. And yesterday, he was almost predominantly with the ones. And Thursday, he really showed himself, I thought, very, very well in that preseason outing.
Extremely.
Vinny, you could talk about the joint practice in Houston holding his own, but Thursday when lights were on and he was there, sticky coverage, making good, clean, solid tackles, much improved from that first preseason game. And now that he's getting run with the ones, tells you he's getting more trust with the coaches, things of that nature. Here's Rob Leonard talking about one, Treydan Stukes.
He's been consistent. I'm pushing him to. My job's to push him outside of his comfort zone and challenge him in every way possible. Safeties are a big part of this defense, and he's done a great job with that. I'm just not going to stop pushing him. And he's done a very good job. I think he played a lot faster last game. And I think, again, the instincts are self-explanatory.
Instincts faster, less thinking. That's what I hear when he says that, especially with the improvements. You're playing faster, you're not thinking as much, right? You're just reacting. You're going off of your study notes, your film prep, all those different things, and that's building, which, again, good on Treydan Stukes. All the reasons you said the Raiders didn't take a wide receiver in the second round, they ended up with Treydan Stukes in the second round. You could sit there and say, well, what about this guy? They got a guy that they believe is going to be an impact player. Something that's just stuck in my head is Clint Kubiak on the phone with him from behind the shield. When the first thing he says, you ready to be a captain over here for our defense? Like, that's how they view it. They view him as not just an impact player, a leader on that defense. And so the fact that he's at this point right now, I don't care how long it took in training camp or whatever it is, Vinny, to your point, this is just the beginning, and this is a hell of a start for Treydan Stukes if he is going to get the opportunity to start, even week one, right, against the Miami Dolphins, and then see where he goes from there.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think we always use this not thinking. It's actually a lot of thinking that's going on. It's
processing.
Yeah, exactly. Process or just having confidence in that information that you're talking about, in your film study, in what you are seeing, because you have a command of it now, a better command of it right now, which is always going to be the process for a Treydan Stukes and a McCoy and those guys. And what I saw on Thursday was somebody that was starting to really get a great command of what his responsibilities were and of that film study and of understanding situations in front of him. And what does that lead to? Somebody who's out there playing with confidence and assuredness and going and now making those plays. The instincts then kick in. The instincts mean nothing if you're if your head is completely empty and you have no idea what the heck's going on out there. That negates everything. But when you do, I remember having a conversation with John Johnson. He was a safety with the LA Rams. Really great player, right? And super smart. He kind of reminds me in a lot of ways of Treydan. I think actually Treydan's going to be better, and that would be really good for the Raiders if that is the case. But he told me about how there were times on the football field where he knew exactly what was getting ready to happen, to the point where he had to fight himself from revealing to the other team that he knew what was going on and just kind of hold his water there before kind of committing himself to something, because that would tee off the other team that he knew what was coming and da-da-da-da. But as soon as that ball snapped, bang, he goes into action because he knew what was going on. And that's what I saw, a player on Thursday that was starting to get it in that regard. And so once that happens on a more frequent basis, which I expect it to be, you're going to see a heat-seeking missile out there. That's what he is. And it was funny because Q and I were in the press box, and there was that little throw to the flat. And at first glance, it looked like that was going to go for some yards. And then all of a sudden, here comes Treydan Stukes flying into the picture and making the tackle for no gain. And Q and I looked at each other like, holy crap. That was a sign that, okay, he's starting to see things. He's starting to understand it better, what the Raiders are asking him, what the other team is doing. And then the natural instincts just take over, and the athletic ability and the speed and the closing and the tackling and all that come into play. And you saw that, I would say about 3, 4, 5 times on Thursday night where he was kind of a Johnny on the spot, because everything was starting to come together. And I expect that, like we said, that's just the beginning for Treydan Stukes. And I'm with you. He might not have been the MVP of training camp, but keep an eye on him during the regular season, because I think he's going to get better and better as the season goes on. And it'll be real fun to look back and see what kind of a first year he had.
Yeah, Treydan Stukes had 4 tackles against Houston in that game. Dalton Johnson had 7. Dalton Johnson, low-key, we haven't talked a lot about him, but special teams, I don't want to say ace just yet, because let's see it in the regular season, but he has been dynamite in teams. So 702-365-9200. Areas of concern, run game, receivers, secondary. What are they for you? Shields up in the CT, Connecticut. Good morning.
Good morning, guys. How we doing today?
Great.
Good. Thanks for taking my call and having me on. Love the show. I just want to reflect back onto the draft and just make a point or opinion is that I think looking back at it now, seeing how our defensive line is getting gashed up the middle. Now, again, it could be a softie or whatever. In the middle, I think maybe possibly that with that second round pick, we should have went from one of them DTs. I understand Treydan Stukes is making plays, but if the safety's coming up and making tackles, that's not a good sign for the first level of our D. So looking back at it, and I see McDonald had a sack on us. I mean, I think with that second round pick, in my opinion, it should have been a DT. Now, that's not my area of concern, believe it or not. My area of concern will always be the offensive line. And the first game with the first team, they went right down the field. But again, I want to see a whole game. I want to see consistency. We got a big signing in Lindenbaum and everything else. But without that O-line, guys, what's Jeanty going to do? What's our number one pick overall going to do? Are the wide receivers going to have time to get open? So that's my area of concern, man, is the offensive line. But again, that second-round pick, in my opinion, should have been a DT. Guys, thanks for taking my call. Shields up. Take care.
Shields up. Appreciate the phone call. Thanks so much.
I mean, I'll say this. You could have gone in any different direction with that second pick. I'm not going to let an unblocked defensive tackle get in a sack, like literally unblocked. He didn't fight anybody off. And I'm not taking anything away from him. I think he's going to be a good player. I think that Stukes is going to have a better year than McDonald. I'm on record. Here we are. What day is today? Put it, stamp it, Clay, cut it, whatever you got to do. I think Treydan Stukes, if he stays healthy, is going to have a better year than that defensive tackle. There was nothing that he did on that play that was anything extraordinary. He was unblocked.
He ran straight.
Yeah. So
pretty good.
I mean, that's
maybe
easy.
he could rely on Mafia and Meredith having miscommunication again, and he can always have free run to the quarterback.
It's easy pickings when you reduce it to that one play. Like you got to look at the volume of work and let it all play out, and you'll drive yourself crazy thinking, oh, we should have done this, we should have done that. Again, I keep reiterating, and I've written this a million times. When you have as bad of a roster, quite honestly, as what John Spytek, let's put it that way, inherited, and there was years of bad drafting and misfortune that led to that. You're not going to be able to turn it over in one season, and you'll drive yourself crazy thinking about what you're thinking about right there. We should have done this. We should have done that. There's nothing about Treydan Stukes that says to me they're going to regret that move. So you just accept the fact that Treydan is going to be, hopefully for the Raiders, a great young player, and accept that, and then figure out other ways to address other needs, because you had so many, you can't solve them all in one round. You have to make a decision at some point, and I think ultimately people are going to look back, hopefully, I should say, and say, nope, Treydan Stukes was the right choice, and then we brought in this defensive tackle through a trade or free agency or next year's draft. And hopefully a couple of years down the road, you're going to look at this roster and say they put it together really well.
Well, just to put Shields up, who's from Connecticut, right, Clay? Yeah. Eddie's just a skosh. The latest addition to the Raiders' defensive line is Foley Fadokasi. Came over from Houston. Mm-hmm. He went to school in Connecticut.
UConn, yeah.
And not for nothing, he was getting some run with the ones on Sunday on that defensive line. And if there was one guy that was making plays every time he was in the game against Houston, burst, acceleration, penetration, Fadokasi. So
it reminded me of Thomas Booker when he first got here last year. Immediately thrust into a lineup and making plays.
I'm not saying
there's a little bittersweetness to that.
Yeah, I will see
why you picked up a guy off on waivers and all of a sudden he's on the first. He's running with the number ones. That's probably not the great sign that sometimes. I mean, hopefully, the light went on and everything's great for him and he earns a starting role and he ends up being a Pro Bowl player. But at first glance, at first blush, that's you know what I'm saying? That speaks to a problem.
I agree. I was trying to just segue.
No, I know where you were headed. Connecticut
shields up to a UConn guy, and he was upset about McDonald's, so that was the fix. Yeah. That for now.
They were listening, Shields. They're trying to make you happy.
I'm trying to make everybody happy here on a Tuesday here on the tailgate. 702-365-9200. More calls, more thoughts next here on Raider. Welcome back inside the morning tailgate, RaiderNation Radio 920. Jason Merrick, Silver Black Sports Network, joining us here at the top of the next hour. Ryan McFadden, hour number 3, and Vinny Clay. I kind of buried the lead.
He's back.
Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports, will be joining us in hour number 3 at 9:30. It's been too long. Very excited to have Fitzy back with us. I'm more excited that Fitzy is up and doing well. We'll get to Fitzy in hour number 3, but very excited for that. Very excited for that. All right, 702-365-9200. Dylan says, didn't realize Dalton Johnson had that many tackles. Haven't noticed him flashing like Stukes has. Well, I would say that's because Stukes has been flashing, again, more predominantly because he's the second-round pick, and kind of your eyes are on 31, right, as he's going about his business. I would say Dalton Johnson, I'm still trying to get used to Dalton Johnson's number. 43? Is that a weird number?
It's a weird number. It is.
Vinny, is that not a, I don't know, 40? Every time I say, I'm like, who's 43? Oh, it's not Dalton Johnson.
That was John Johnson's number.
Who?
Pro Bowl safety for the Rams. So if he
John Johnson the third.
Yeah, John Johnson third. If he could be, and I think they were drafted kind of the same. John was a 3rd-round pick. What was Dalton? A 4th-round pick? When was Dalton?
Yeah, he was a 5th rounder, right?
5th rounder.
With the trade for Tyree Wilson.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I mean, if he can be that, then that's
that'd be great. Yeah, that'd be ideal.
So live up to number 43. So not. Yeah.
No, but what I was saying is Dylan, I didn't notice him flash as much as Treydan. I think Dalton flashed more in special teams is what I was kind of alluding to. He's kind of been a core member of that special teams. I don't want to say he's a starter in that, but he might be with Joe DeCamillis. But I've noticed him, especially in punt coverage. I've noticed Dalton Johnson a ton. Tommy Eichenberg still continues to be a wrecking ball in kickoff coverage and things of that nature, but number 43 continues to pop on teams and obviously late in games in these preseasons, racking up the tackles. So good on them and good on Dalton Johnson. But because, Vinny, the other part Rob Leonard talked about with when it pertains to the young secondary is, look, you guys are going to give up catches. That is the ugly truth behind it. You're going to give up catches. It's the guys that kind of bounce back the quickest. And so that's something that he is trying to get his message out to the team. And he was even saying that I'm not out there on the field when it's 2nd and long, 3rd and long, you give up a first down. Somebody in there there has to be something inside of you or somebody on the field that is snapping guys back into reality. So for me, it's not necessarily, I've liked the progression and the ascent of the young secondary. What is it going to look like in the regular season? Like, how far off is that group going to look compared to where they will be by season's end, if that makes sense? So when I say area of concern, not concern for long-term potential, I'm just talking about the here and the now. Like, what is the concern? Is it that young secondary being able to deliver week 1? Is it the run game? Or is that wide receiver room? We'll continue to get your thoughts and take your calls in hour number 3. Jesse Merrick, Silver and Black Sports Network, joins next. Flying through into hour number 2 here on the Morning Tailgate. It's RaiderNation Radio 920. Vince Sapienza, Vinny Bonsignore, and Clay Baker. Coming to you live from Las Vegas here on a Tuesday, August 25th, 2026. Now, before we bring in our next guest, I made some comments about the number 43. And how 43 just looked odd to me. Still trying to get used to the numbers with the new guys, and it's Dalton Johnson. I just got a litany of texts.
What?
About George Atkinson. Raider Nation, yes, I know George Atkinson was 43. I was not alive to watch him in person. So when I said, I didn't say anything was wrong with the number, Clay.
You didn't.
I'm not used to seeing that number for the Raiders. So getting used to it, that's all I was saying. I'm doing a feature piece on the Super Bowl 11 team.
Yeah.
Ahead of Thursday. I'm very familiar with George Atkinson. So all the respect in the world to the great 43. Just wanted to make that clear. Okay? Because I don't want any more strays. And that's how we start hour number 2. Jesse Merrick, Silver and Black Sports Network. Jesse, it's dangerous out here on a Tuesday. Everybody's tense. Everybody's on edge. Ashton Jeanty goes down on Sunday. We don't know what to do with ourselves. We're questioning numbers. How are you? Good morning.
How dare you question numbers, Vince? How dare you?
There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. Just getting used to seeing it with my eyes on the field. Jesse Merrick, Silver and Black Sports Network. Jesse, good morning. The question we're asking today, when we look at the areas of concern for the Raiders, what sticks out for you the most? Where do you rank them? Secondary, young secondary, wide receiver room, or the run game in general with the news of Ashton Jeanty going down? You and I were standing side by side inside the indoor facility as it took place, watching what happened. I'm curious where you stand today, a couple of days removed from that kind of shock and awe a little bit of the silence and everything that went with it, and what areas of concern kind of stick out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for one, all the reporting we're hearing, it sounds like the Raiders dodged a bullet because, again, Vince, like you and I were there and we saw that was a crazy scene. The reaction from the players would lead you to believe that it was much worse than what the reports are giving right now. So, if he is indeed going to be back sooner than a lot of people probably thought when it first happened, that's a massive win for the Raiders. But in the interim, you're wondering, what's the kid Mike Washington Jr. going to do with more opportunities if for whatever reason Ashton is not available for week 1? At the same time, too, probably not a bad idea to get a look at a kid that the Raiders like a lot early on as well. So I think Mike Washington has impressed me. So, I'm a little worried about the rushing attack, but not as worried, I think, as probably the receiving core. Kind of we've talked about it all offseason, and it's kind of shown throughout camp, too. Like, who's that guy? Obviously, we know Brock Bowers can win one-on-one against anybody. He's a cheat code. He has been ever since he's into the league, and we are seeing that each and every day in practice. But, like, week in and week out, who can be that other guy to win that man-to-man battle, to take the heat off of Brock? And we haven't seen that guy really emerge. Yes, Malik Benson has looked good, but he's not looking like a world beater by any means. And we haven't seen the consistency out of Jalen Naylor and Trey Tucker either. And I think just kind of one thing that stood out to me is that we've seen Naylor working with Mendoza more, not only in the game, but also at practice since then too. And, they're still very much so trying to get on the same page. Now, we know that Kirk is in the driver's seat and like 99% chance going to be the starter, but still needs to get on the same page with the receivers. Fernando does, and Kirk does as well. And so we need to see more consistency out of that group. So that would definitely be an area of concern. And then the young corners, too. Like, we've talked plenty about that. But I think I'm more than anything concerned about being able to stop the run, which has been an issue for this defense. And we've seen it kind of pop up lately here in the preseason. Defensively, like, they're mixing up a ton of different looks, surprisingly. I thought they were going to be really vanilla. They're going 2 down, 3 down, 4 down, disguising coverages, blitzing, things like that. And we're still having some issues in that area. So what's that going to look like in the season? Yes, that was a bunch of 2s, so I'm not trying to overreact too much. But I wasn't out in Houston. Word is they were struggling to stop the run there as well. So my question is going to be, like, can you stop the run when the season starts, when it matters for real? And then everything else may or may not fall into place if you're able to do that. But you need to be able to have that base down first. And, again, I think this is going to be a team that's going to be sitting in a lot of nickel, too. So they're going to need to be able to stop the run from mostly light boxes, too. The best defenses around the league have been able to do that. So that's something to me that's an area of concern right now, just because we've seen them struggle with it so far.
Jesse, let's go back to the wide receivers, and I think the frustration is this: when you have like you said, a cheat code like Brock Bowers on the field, teams are going to slant their defense to him, right? We've seen it in training camp. We saw it in Houston. You're going to see that in games. The frustration is the Raiders don't need. I mean, it would be great if one of the wide receivers on the current roster could break out and be a premier guy. But short of that, which is almost unrealistic, is you're going to be working against not lax coverage, but advantageous coverage, because everything's going to be sliding toward number 89. Can you take advantage? Can you exploit that? And that's the frustration, is that so far, and we've seen whether it's their own defense or opposing teams' defense, like we saw in Houston, when teams are challenging and focusing on Brock Bowers, we just haven't seen any other wide receiver really step up and take advantage of that. Is that your frustration? And what do you think that the Raiders can do? Who do you think the Raiders, of these wide receivers, are going to be able to most take advantage of what is going to be advantageous defenses against them?
Yeah, I think if you're the Raiders or if you're a fan of this team, that has to be a big worry for you, exactly the way you laid it out. Because, again, like it's not like you're getting, Pat Surtain, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like, hey, you're getting that number one, guy is following you around in the receiving corps. That's going to Brock, as you said. So, yeah, you're getting looks that are much more favorable, or at least should be. And in terms of the guy that I think is in the driver's seat to be able to be that guy, I think it's Jalen Nailor. I think Trey Tucker is going to be more of the guy that can be used, to mix in different looks, to change the strength of the formation in terms of motions and things like that too, quickly, and make the defense have to think. Obviously, he's a guy that's got the speed to be able to challenge deep as well. And where does he factor in the running game also too is going to be interesting to watch. But for me, Jalen Nailor is a guy that I think can do a little bit of everything. And yes, this is a dude that was, to this point in his career, has been a number 3 receiver. But look at the team that he's coming from. And everyone, all the advanced analytics guys, people that are, in the scouting world, all this stuff, they all think that he's primed for a better opportunity. And I think if and when things start to click for him, he's that guy that should be able to kind of do that. Because I think he's going to be really effective on the outbreaking routes. If you go back, I think it's reception perception, does a lot of the breakdowns of those. He's been super effective on the outbreakers. We've seen this offense, when the ones and even when the twos have been out there, rely heavily on those outbreakers. It's typically a safe, quote-unquote, route, and he's done really well with those. And also, too, he's a bigger guy than I think a lot of people realize. Not like some massive dude, and yes, he's out there with Trey Tucker and Malik Benson, who's also not a big dude, but I don't know. When I first saw him and just throughout camp every now and then, I'm like, he's a larger person than I thought he was going to be. And so I think he can do some of the over-the-middle stuff too. So I just think he's more of the complete package of a receiver, or at least has more of that in his bag and is a better route runner to be able to have that ability. The big question is he going to be able to do that? Another thing, too, with my conversation with just the receiving core in general that I keep kind of having, like, how often are they going to be in 11 personnel? I feel like they're going to be at the bottom of the league, or at least towards it, in 11 personnel usage. We're going to see so much 12, 13, and 22. I am so fascinated to see at the end of the year how much 11 personnel they're actually using. Like, I'm going to be fascinated to watch and see how many times we see 3 wide receivers out there for this group.
All right. With that being said, when you take a look at knowing in early next week the Raiders will have the waiver priority when it begins, then what position group, as we touched on defensive line and wide receiver, what position group should they add as a priority first?
Yeah, I mean, with them waiving Noah Brown, that one's interesting to me because I didn't have that on my bingo card. That wasn't something I was expecting, especially given the fact that we still haven't seen Dante Thornton Jr. out there at practice. So to me, it seems a receiver. And I know I feel horrible even saying those words because I know Vin, me, you, everybody, we've all been on the radio here talking back and forth, and I've been adamant of don't sign a veteran receiver. Let these guys prove it to themselves.
Yeah.
But now I'm sitting here saying it because of the moves that they've made, where I'm like, are they going to bring someone in? Again, I still think they need to let the guys they have show them what they can do, but the moves they've made, it's like they have to bring in a receiver, right? Because of who's not available and who they just got rid of. To me, that stands out. And then obviously, again, the situation with Jeanty, we'll see how that plays out if they decide to, bring in a running back as well. And then potentially, a depth piece at corner, given putting, I'm blanking on his name, but 39 when he went down, they put him on IR. So. Yeah. Yes, thank you. I'm glad you had to say it and not me. So those are the 3 spots I'd be watching them to address. But receiver stands out to me given the fact that they just got rid of Noah Brown and then now the status of Dante Thornton Jr. being up in the air.
It's Jesse Merrick, Silver and Black Sports Network. Join us here on the Morning Tailgate, RaiderNation Radio 920. Yeah, Noah Brown's experience with the Raiders short-lived. Obviously, Dante Thornton Jr. nowhere to be found. It feels, if I just imagined as he was talking, it's like he's just being pushed closer and closer to the edge of, all right, just sign a wide receiver. Just bring somebody else in the building. But we're not there yet. We're not there yet, Jesse. When we get there, we'll get there, if we do get there. But I want to go to the DBs. Treydan Stukes has been by our assessment, a slow build from just being with the twos to this past couple days, really getting run with the ones. And I say slow build because I think a lot of people thought he was just immediately going to be running with the ones day one of training camp. That wasn't the case. But when you look at what Rob Leonard is trying to install, a whole bunch of new, it's pretty impressive considering when you have a new coach, typically they rely on veterans, right, to just kind of be the gatekeepers and lead the way. The fact that Treydan Stukes continues with his play to flash and push through that to get some run with the ones feels like maybe this is the guy that a lot of people were excited about on draft night.
Yeah, no, I agree. I had been saying, the first week and a half, 2 weeks of camp where I was like, man, it just feels like it's only a matter of time for him, until he really starts, getting that arrow up, getting more opportunities, all this stuff. And then I expected we would see him, mixed in a lot more nickel looks in the first preseason game. That didn't happen. Greedy Vance got that. So I was like, what the heck's going on? But then that following week of practice, we saw him mixing in safety and nickel. And I was like, okay, maybe this is when it's happening. And then this last preseason game, we see him getting a ton of burn, working at both spots there. And then now, since then, he's worked exclusively with the ones. And Isaiah Palamao has rotated a bit with the ones, but mostly been a two there. And we've seen Stukes at safety. And that, I think, is interesting. I almost I think, and this is a light version of it, but he's essentially kind of doing the same thing that Trey Zune is doing on the offensive side of the ball. I think it's a little more impressive, if I will, just with what's being thrown at Trey in terms of center, right tackle. He's seen work at guard, all that different stuff. But in terms of Treydan, he's getting so much stuff thrown at him, so many different roles. There's he's essentially as a nickel in this defense. I understand that Nakobe Dean and that linebacker spot is the green dot, but you're essentially the quarterback of the defense as the nickel. And so they worked him there with the twos a lot. They've got a lot of work with him as a safety too, and there's just so much that comes into play in that. Especially with all the stuff and all the movement that all these offenses in the NFL do. So the fact that it was a slow burn, I think, has helped him, and now he just kind of continued to run with those opportunities, which I think is really cool to see for this kid that, a lot of people really loved coming out. And, you hear the stuff of Adam Schefter where one, exec said that he could be the steal of the draft and all that. So, if this kid can step in and be one of the safeties back there with Jeremy Chin and then Taron Johnson working as the primary nickel for now, and then eventually, Stukes steps into the role as a nickel in the years to come, I mean, that's going to be huge for this team because I think this kid's got the play speed to be able to help defend the run from depth. We saw his instincts on display in the last preseason game there. And as a coverage guy, he's shown he can do a lot of that too. And he's got the versatility, which is what you need in today's NFL for, to keep offenses guessing because they're going to sit back in that too high shell. And you're going to have to be able to move and adapt to what the offense does. And I think he has that game. He is that chess piece type of player. And we're starting to see it emerge a bit more now. And it doesn't look like he's slowing down anytime soon.
So Clint Kubiak has not named a starter yet at quarterback, and part of that might be coach speak. Maybe he's sending a message, throughout the locker room, don't get comfortable, nobody's assured of a job. But I also think that there might be another message that he's sending, and that is directly to Fernando Mendoza. Look, keep fighting, keep pushing. Let's see how far we can take it. Let's see how far you can take it. Doesn't mean you're going to get the job, but there's still a door open, so don't get comfortable thinking you're just the backup. Keep fighting. What do you think about that, line of thinking?
Yeah, no, it seems like that's what he's doing. And I mean, look at when they first arrived. We all knew that Fernando Mendoza wasn't going to be the number 3 quarterback, but when he first came, in OTAs and minicamp and all that, he was the number 3 and had to quote unquote work his way up to be the number 2. And it seems like each step of the way, that's what they've made him and a lot of the young guys do. They've had to prove it to him. And I think keeping that going is good because, look, when the season starts, if Kirk is indeed the guy, like we all expect, Fernando is essentially going to be put on the shelf, and they're going to be leaning. Yes, they're going to probably still be mixing in reps with Fernando and things like that, trying to get him work to make sure he's ready. But it's not going to be at the level that it is right now. So, continue to say those things and do it and make him feel like it's a real competition and see what the kid can do and how he responds to that. so many times, like, I think we've talked about it, like when, they'll rotate guys through and, like, see how they deal with the, like, oh, man, is my spot up for grabs or whatever it is, And the coaches are trying to see how they'll respond. Like, I think that's where you see the true competitiveness in Fernando come out, and maybe that brings out the best in him. Maybe he shrinks in that. I think he was the guy that would rise to the occasion, and he seemingly has in those opportunities, So I think it's one of those deals where, like, don't just shut the door on that, because then, okay, maybe you're going to stunt some of his development. But if there's a light at the end of the tunnel where he feels like that door's cracked open a little bit, then, yeah, keep working and see what this kid can do. So I've liked that. Although, I mean, again, we all see, and they've said it over the offseason, what they want to do, and it's clear that that's their plan, and they want to stick with it. But leaving that door open and making it feel like a real competition can only pay dividends. Like, there's no negative that can come from it. Kirk's been there, done that in the NFL. He's not going to be insecure about his job, and maybe if he is, okay, maybe that brings like 1% more out of him, which I know is so cliche and can feel like coach speak and all that. But there is not a negative that can come from doing that and making it feel like there is true competition everywhere.
Well, going back to that first that start in Houston for Fernando, what was your biggest takeaway about his game after the pick six?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that, like, that's the thing, like, you go and you go on YouTube or you go and you look at any, headlines and stuff, oh, Fernando struggled and all that stuff. And I'm guilty of that sometimes too, because, you got to get people to watch. But he responded and had 6 straight completions after that interception. That, to me, is one heck of a response. We talk about it all the time, that this kid seemingly responds each time adversity hits, and he went and did that. And then, his stat line was 8 for 15, if I remember right, in terms of completions. Yep. Yeah, so there were 2 drops by Malik Benson, so that gets you to 10 for 15. There was another instance where he had a rush right in his face and, like, killed it, threw it in the ground. Like, so he wasn't that far away from being 11 for 15, And so, like, I think if that happens, like, we're having a different discussion with him. He also, too, if Benson catches those 2 balls, very likely goes over the 100-yard mark. And I think people are dissecting his game and talking about it a little differently, and probably talking more about, wow, look at the way this kid responded from that interception rather than just concentrating on the interception. And I think another thing, too, that stands out to me, if you guys haven't seen it, Kurt Warner, put out a tweet basically talking about how difficult that first play with Naylor is in terms of having to adjust as a quarterback when the defender is pressed, and how that adjusts what the route is going to be and the depth at which the receiver is going to run it. Like, so they're throwing a lot at Fernando, and so I think for him to even be at this point when he is learning to play under center, which I know every quarterback does, but that's still a lot to do, and then learning this offense, it is very word-heavy and has so much thrown at you. Like, he's making strides. Like, and the fact that he hasn't looked like a total mess, I think, is a big positive, because there's a lot of guys that have in those situations, And so he's responded. He's been, like, steady Eddie the whole way through, and I think that's massive for this team, and just shows you, like, this is a kid that continues to learn and grow, and each time those mistakes do pop up, he's come back better for them. And so that just shows you that he can move in the right direction. He did that in college, so why wouldn't that be the case here in the pros? I don't think we've learned anything or seen anything that would lead us to believe that's not the case. So I've been impressed with how he's responded to each and every one of those mistakes, if you will, and those opportunities are only going to help him, continue to grow. And I think, too, even from Houston, like, it was one you could tell he was bummed, after that game, but, like, he's, again, using it as a learning opportunity. Even the joint practice, the way he was talking afterwards, like, he's got the right attitude and the right mindset, and he realizes this is the time to make those mistakes, to be better when the time does come to do it for real.
Still learning those margins is one Fernando Mendoza, and that Kurt Warner piece that you're talking about. I mean, you talk about thin margins. He's talking about the difference between a 5-yard drop or a 5-yard stick and an 8-yard stick for the receiver, and the decision making that the quarterback has to make in that split second to know what the receiver is going to do based on the coverage at the time of the snap. So very complicated, very intricate system. Jesse, we'll let you go on this one. Clint Kubiak set to meet with us here later this morning. So before we prognosticate what he's going to say and what Thursday will look like, I'm going to give you the power one last time. You get to decide who plays, how much, what we see Thursday night. So in terms of the quarterbacks and / starters on both sides of the ball, are we seeing them? What are you doing? What is Coach Merrick doing for the Raiders?
Well, what is Coach Merrick doing? I mean, if it's if it's me, this last preseason game, I'm not throwing the starters out there. You know, we saw them in the first preseason game for a drive. As you and I have talked at length, Vince, like we saw Sam Darnold for one drive. So I think, what is Coach Merrick doing? I'm leaning on what's happened before, and I think also, too, Kubiak's going to do the same. I don't need to see Kirk Cousins. I don't need to see the starters. I would show Fernando again for a half, and then have Aiden O'Connell out there for a quarter. And then can we get Jacob Clark some reps? Like, if I'm the coach, like, I'm doing that. Can we get the kid out there? You know what I mean? I'm giving him a quarter. I want to see what this kid can do in a live game. Even if he goes out there and lights it up, I don't think you're in any danger of somebody claiming him. You can probably throw him back on the practice squad. Like, just let the kid go out there and play. You know, that's what I would go and do. So, yeah, I'd give Fernando a half, and then I'd see a quarter from each of the other guys.
Quarter? I mean, I'm all for it. Jess, I'm all for it. But I mean, kid can't get a rep in team drill and practice. You want to give him full quarter?
I'm probably going to be wrong about that, and I'm okay with that. But
Coach Merrick's never wrong.
10 toes down for Jacob Clark, man. You know,
Coach Merrick's never wrong. Jesse Merrick, Silver and Black Sports Network. Jesse, we appreciate you as always. Great insight, great takes as always. We'll see you later today at practice.
Yes, sir. Thanks, guys.
All right, Jesse Merrick, Silver and Black Sports Network. Check out his work up on YouTube, up on the X at Jesse SB. SN. 702-365-9200 is the number. When we get back to your thoughts, your conversation, your calls on your areas of concern. Secondary, receivers, running game. Where is it today? Here on a Tuesday on the tailgate. It's Raider Nation Radio 920. But first,
hey guys, are you looking at yourself in the mirror and going, man, I've put on a few pounds and that's not right? Or maybe you're not feeling good, or maybe you got some aches and pains and you intuitively know that that shouldn't be the case. And you keep saying to yourself, I got to take care of it, but I'll start tomorrow. And you keep saying, I'll start tomorrow. Well, those tomorrows start rolling or start fading. And here's the thing. You have an opportunity right now today with City MD. If you're tired of feeling sluggish, frustrated with your weight, dealing with daily aches and pains, or just not feeling like yourself, it's time to take control. City MD in Las Vegas offers personalized wellness and weight management programs designed for real, lasting results. But they don't stop there. City MD also provides advanced pain therapy and primary care, giving you a complete head-to-toe approach to your health. One team, one plan built around you. More energy, less pain, better health, real confidence. And here's the thing. Appointments are filling up fast, so stop waiting, stop pushing it off. Give them a call at 725-255-7246. That's 725-255-7246. Our good friends Andy or Claudia will take care of it from there. Or just go to citymdphp.com right now. That's citymdphp.com right now. Schedule your consultation. City MD, stop waiting, start feeling like yourself again today.
You know, you can get into your own head, you know, what to show, what not to show. You know, I wanted our play style to improve from game 1 to game 2. And I think we did that. You know, just the focus of what I'm asking these guys to do. Clint talks all the time about our operation, substitution, getting in and out of the huddle, sense of urgency to get lined up, safety rotation. You know, like that's really been the focus over all of those things of improving with that.
Raiders defensive coordinator Rob Leonard talking about the improvement, finding that consistency with his unit. Welcome back inside the tailgate, everybody. 702-365-9200 is the number. The question, areas of concern, that secondary, is it, the run game? Is it the wide receiver group? Where is it for you here on a Tuesday? And sticking with the defensive theme for just a hot second, Vinny, I thought it was pretty interesting when Rob yesterday was talking about the defensive unit felt like they were gelling more in that preseason game than that first one, because they weren't just running a vanilla defense. They were running their actual stuff later in the game, and guys were picking up on it and acting with what they've been training for and practicing for weeks. It makes sense, right? But it shouldn't be a surprise at the same time that it looked better, too, as the game went on in that one, as they started to run, what Leonard hopes to run in the regular season.
Yeah, and for sure. And just guys, getting better, and guys playing with more confidence, guys having a better command of things, guys getting one game out of the way already, right? And so that's what's really encouraging, is that you saw the improvement from a bunch of young players from 1 week to the next. So that's what you're asking guys to do. You're asking guys to move on from the good and the bad, from the learn from the good and the bad, and they clearly did that, and that's an encouraging sign.
East Oakland Raider up on the text line says, what's good, tailgate, from the Bay to L.A. to Las Vegas? First, beat the Whiners. And two, I'm concerned about the O-line and D-line depth. Everyone needs to step up. The time is now. You know, I know you've said this, Vinny, and I agree with you completely, 100%. So I'm not just putting it on you. I'm just giving you credit for it. Can't always be Max Crosby, right? It can't for the good of the team. That being said, when Max is in there, it's a different D-line. It just is. So while I agree that the defensive line and the run defense hasn't been maybe what Raider Nation would have hoped, Max being in there is going to make a difference. I just feel like the conversation at this point would have been more so, hey, how about player X? Looks like he could be the guy running with Max. We've yet to see that. We've heard nothing but good things about Tonka Hemingway. Have yet to really see that from production-wise. Again, the starters haven't gotten a lot of run in the preseason to begin with. You can talk more about the joint practice of what you saw from that defensive line. Max is obviously a massive difference maker. I just think the conversation at this point of training camp and ahead of the regular season, I think Raider Nation was more so hoping like, man, really thought somebody would have emerged more than what we've heard thus far.
Right, and Max was on the field at the joint practice, so and that's really kind of where I put the credence. Not him. It's not his fault. But he was the quote unquote starting defensive line was on the field quite a bit against the Houston Texans in practice on that Tuesday. And the run defense, it was definitely a struggle, and it's coming from the inside. It's the interior of the defensive line. We talk about Tonka Hemingway, and he's shown real promise. His primary skill set, though, right now, is in the pass rush. It's the run game, with the play strength and the anchoring and all that kind of stuff. That's probably not his strength at this point, and that's really what the issue has been, and what the Raiders need to just get better at, and whether it's bringing in additions or guys just getting better, but that point of attack, interior defensive line, slowing down the run and allowing also linebackers to go make plays, and so that's the biggest issue at this point.
Well, it makes me wonder which player would benefit the most once Max is out there, especially on the defensive line, because Max normally will take up a double team. And sometimes a triple team, or even they just move the play to the other side of the field.
Yeah, you're hoping that's Quiddy Pay, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's what.
Well, we're talking about run defense, though.
Yeah, but I just
somebody
think
on the interior.
I know what you're saying on the interior line, but
yeah.
to Clay's point, if they're running to the opposite way, you still need somebody penetrating, and that can come from anywhere. Because if you have for what I'm saying is, you're hoping that's Quiddy Pay, one, because of what you paid him. You're hoping that if that is the case, where you're running away from Max Crosby more often than not, that Quiddy Pay is also getting that penetration that will allow more focus on that side too, to allow the other guys on the inside. But Vinny, I think your point is well taken. You haven't seen from a run stuffing perspective that penetration from the middle of the defense. I think that's the biggest. When you talk about you can't fix everything in one off season, I mean, that's another area you point to really would like a difference maker there.
Yeah, and going into the draft, everyone, there's a reason why we were mocking, interior defensive linemen to the Raiders with that second pick in the second round. Hopefully Treydan Stukes is good enough, and I believe he will, where you just have to say to yourself as a fan or as a team, all right, weren't able to help the defensive line at that position in the draft, but it's so not that it's okay, but we did end up with a really good young player in Treydan Stukes, so that that's a win right there. You just have to, like we keep talking about, you just have to keep chipping away at this roster, and guys like that, disruptive forces on the interior of the defensive line, don't grow on trees. Those are a tough commodity. commodity to get, and so it's another box that the Raiders are going to have to check off. And right now, it's on Robbie Leonard to scheme around it and to push guys and to help develop guys so that they're going to be able to be at least adequate or efficient stopping the run this year.
Everybody points to Cade McDonald and the sack he had. We touched on that, but did you see Big Citrus this weekend for the Giants? Dropping back in coverage.
Oh, yeah.
Dominique Orange. He was one of my favorites. If you've been listening, you know.
Blotting out the sun.
Big Citrus was one of the names that I really wanted the Raiders to get, based on just name alone. Had nothing to do with the tape. But turns out the tape was actually pretty good because he's been actually really good for the Big Blue Wrecking Crew over there in New York. But I digress. Omar up on the text line says, biggest area of concern for me is the run defense. There's been no signs of it being successful so far. Just hoping once they have all the starters, it will look different, but I'm not too hopeful right now. Wide receivers are second for me, but at least they have Brock. And I want to believe the running game will be okay, and Clinton Dennison can scheme that up, especially now that they have Linderbaum. That is Omar in the Bay. Omar, appreciate you as always. And speaking of Linderbaum, he stepped up to the podium yesterday, and we heard from him earlier in training camp, right? Talking about, all the new, getting online, making friends, getting to know his teammates. Well, now after 4+ weeks, we got to chat with him again and basically get a status update on where the offensive line is today.
And that's the thing about Caleb is he's always trying to find, things to improve on, things to work on. If you saw his notebook, you'd see the amount of notes that dude takes. And that's the kind of guys you want in the room. He plays the game the right way, has the right attitude, wants to get better, wants to work hard, and we all need to strive to be like that and have that mentality. Making a lot of strides. Not where we want to be. Continue to work on operation standpoint things, working together. And I think the thing about the offensive line position is just the more reps you get with each other, the better you get. At least the good teams, the better you get. So just continue to strive for that and continue to get better each and every day in practice.
So that's Raiders center, the highest paid interior offensive lineman in NFL history, Tyler Linderbaum, and the Gremlins got to us, went out of sorts there. That last little bit is him talking about the improvement in them. Again, can't microwave an offense. It's got to bake for some time. I think the good is that for the Raiders, for the majority of it, that has been the case. The one outlier has been Jackson Powers-Johnson. Gets hurt, basically out essentially, a week's worth of dealings last weekend. But the silver lining to it is that has been the one spot that there has been a rotation, where Caleb Rogers, as you heard in that first bite, has gotten run with the one. So the rest of the other four, Linderbaum, Burford, Miller, and DJ Glaze have been steadfast since day one, seemingly, in those two guys, Jackson Powers-Johnson, Caleb Rogers, have been rotating. So even though JPJ was out for a little bit, the seamless transition and the seamless building has been able to been accomplished still. That is the good. I guess I don't know if the word concern, but the unknown at this point, Vinny and Clay, is still the right guard spot. Jackson Powers-Johnson returned to practice on Sunday, and since then, yesterday, Sunday, has been still a rotation at the right guard spot. So it leads the question, what does that look like for them for Thursday in particular? Will we see them? JPJ missed a few days and missed some important days, I would say, with the joint practice and maybe even some of that preseason if he were to play. I don't know if he would have or not. The ones did not play. Caleb Rogers did play Thursday night in that preseason game. How many reps did he miss in terms of the evaluation for the coaching staff? What still needs to be seen from them? I think that is a very big question mark, as it was at the start of training camp, guys.
Well, look, if you're the Raiders, you'd almost be irresponsible not to be look at Jackson's game logs. then go look at Tyler Linderbaum's game logs. Go look at DJ Glaze's game logs. Go look at Spencer Burford's game logs. Go look at Colton Miller outside of the, he did have the injury last year, but he's, for the most part of his career, aside from a couple of just unlucky type of situations that he's had to deal with, he's been a workhorse. He's been a guy, an anchor. He's been a guy that you can rely on to be out there and playing. What you can't rely on right now after 2 years is for that to be the case, unfortunately, with Jackson Powers Johnson. So whether it's an open competition to win the starting job or whether you're preparing for a situation of Jackson's not going to be available, we need to have somebody that has gotten extensive work with the first team. Let's incorporate that into our plan during training camp. I think there's a little bit of that going on as well with Caleb Rogers. And by the way, along the way, he's also now pushing for the starting job. He got his opportunity and he's run with it. So the long and short of it, though, is that as we said going into training camp, it was almost critical for the Raiders to make a decision as quickly as possible on who those five are. Maybe you want to go 5.5 at this point, with Caleb and Jackson Powers Johnson rotating at right guard. But the fact of the matter is they've got a lot of time, as much time as you possibly can have at this point, basically, throughout training camp, of working together. That starting 5.5, 6 guys, whatever you want to call it, have worked extensively. There hasn't been what there's been in the past, where there's just been a bunch of this guy, one day he's at center, then the other guy at the right guard, and the left guard, and then this and then that, and it just, I understand why they were doing it, but doing it came at an expense, because I felt like when they started the season that the starting group just was either still under construction or B, just not cohesive and hadn't built that chemistry because they hadn't been able to use as many reps as possible on one basic starting group. So, I like the approach this year. They've followed through on that. They've made a quick decision on what that starting 5-ish is going to look like, and as a result, they've gotten them a lot of work. And I'm quite honestly pleased with where the offensive line is. I know what happened in Houston. I was there. You don't have to explain it to me, but there's a little bit of nuance involved there. That is just a ridiculously good defensive front, and them having a good day against the Raiders is the type of day they have against everybody. It's why they are so good. So I want to see it in other situations against other teams before I start freaking out, and I'm not about to freak out. I liked what I saw against the Cardinals, some of what the work that they were doing when they got in there in that preseason game. I've liked what I've seen in training camp. I've liked not just individual players, but how that group works together, the scheme that they're in. A lot of different things are really encouraging to me. And so I think that the Raiders' offensive line is going to be a bit of a pleasant surprise this year. So we'll see, and that's my prediction.
I want to stay on the offensive line here. On the other side, get thoughts on what we might see Thursday in that preseason finale against San Francisco. 702-365-9200. Would love to get your thoughts up on the text line. Take your calls as well. But first, Clay has a gift for you.
Be caller number 9 at 702-365-9200. You get a pair of tickets for UNLV Memphis coming up this Saturday, August 28th. Be caller number 9. You have to pick these tickets up here at Lotus Broadcasting. 702-365-9200 on Raider Nation Radio 9.
I feel like we're boxers walking into a ring right now. I feel like we're about to throw down this music.
And now,
I like it. It's a good feel ahead of the 49ers preseason finale. Starters or not, I want to continue on the offensive line conversation if we can, because Jason up on the text line says he's worried about the O-line. I believe it's time to invest top picks in the trenches. Not just picks, top picks. But let me ask you this. Vinny Clay, Jackson Powers Johnson, Caleb Rogers. Do you have them play Thursday night?
No.
Neither one?
No, I'm not. No. Mm-mm.
I think their breadth of work has already covered the fact that they don't have to play in this game right now. What the work they've done in the preseason already in the practice, that shows me enough. Okay. And now let's get some other pieces in there.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you take him out, or if you take both of them out, right? Because as we pointed to, the health status of JPJ is always been there, right? Can't ignore that. So you can't just play one, not the other, because then if something happens to him, then you are really out on it. But
don't want to go down that road.
then I begs the question, how much are you playing Fernando Mendoza? Making sure he's properly protected and not running for his life back there, because how much good work can he actually get if he can't get protected? So that plays into it as well. So if those two guys aren't playing, then the other four are definitely not playing, right, on Thursday.
Right.
So we saw, again, Jordan Meredith and Antonio Maffis, they're going to unfortunately be remembered this preseason for not blocking Caden McDonald and Fernando getting sacked. But I'm curious, what would be the plan for one Fernando, if that is indeed the case, if that is the route you're going, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but that has to play into the conversation with Fernando, no?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to play Fernando extensively, you probably, maybe you do have to think about who's going to be with him on the offensive line. Now, he played on last Thursday with the second team offensive line. Obviously Caleb started that game because technically he's. I mean, if you look at the depth chart, he's right. He is the backup. So. Maybe something along. I guess in that scenario, yeah, maybe a Caleb Rogers plays. I don't know about Jackson Powers Johnson. Don't know exactly how far along he is from whatever it was that he was dealing with, and maybe you want to give that one more week before actually putting him out there in a game. I know he's been practicing, but maybe that maybe there's something about that. So. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a nuanced question, but I could definitely see at least Caleb and the second team offensive line out there with Fernando if you're going to play Fernando.
What also makes it interesting is seeing Treydan work at center with Fernando as of yesterday.
Versatile.
Again, he's done throughout camp, but in the last few weeks he's been predominantly at right tackle with those twos. So seeing him get some center reps back again, I'm curious if maybe that's the fix, because Treydan was at right tackle with the twos against Houston. I thought he played very well.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the way to protect Fernando's move Treydan on the inside.
And I think what they're doing with Treydan is they're preparing him to be a super sub this year. He's gonna, if somebody goes down, he might be the backup center. He might be the backup this or the backup that. So that's the other part of that.
Yeah, but again, the upgrade at the interior of that O-line, if Caleb Rogers doesn't play, again, right. This is me speculating. We're going to hear from Clint Kubiak later this morning as to, hopefully, maybe we'll get some more answers what Thursday will look like. But we'll continue the conversation with Ryan McFadden of ESPN next here on The Tailgate.
The band that helps start.
It's hour number 3 here on the Morning Tailgate, RaiderNation Radio 920, the flagship for the Silver and Black. Vince Sapienza, Vinny Bonsignor, and Clay Baker. Coming in live from Las Vegas here on a Tuesday, August 25th. 2026, 2 days removed from the Raiders preseason finale against the 49ers at Allegiant Stadium. The work continues for the Silver and Black at Raiders HQ later this morning. Set to hear from Clint Kubiak for the first time since Ashton Jeanty went down in practice on Sunday. And we're asking you, getting your thoughts. What are your concerns here on a day like today? Is it the Raiders running game? Is the Raiders receiver room? Or is it that secondary, that youthful exuberance that we were talking so much about, but we're inching closer to things getting real? Where is it for you? 702-365-9200. We'll get to your thoughts, but first, we are welcoming our next guest. Tuesday, hour number 3. It's ESPN's own Ryan McFadden. Ryan, good morning. Welcome. It's been a couple days since the immediate shock and awe of Ashton Jeanty going down. We were standing right there. We saw kind of it all unfold, and the immediate aftermath was everyone bracing for the worst. Turns out it looks like the Raiders potentially avoided the worst-case scenario with a knee or even a high ankle sprain with just a regular ankle sprain. We'll wait to see if we can get official confirmation or a timetable from Clint Kubiak later this morning, but when that news takes place and Ashton Jeanty, at least for the immediate future, not available, your immediate outlook, how does that change for the Raiders in 2026?
Based on if it's a situation in which Ashton Jeanty is, maybe missed the first week or first 3 weeks of the season, it wouldn't change just much. I think Mike Washington has shown that he's capable enough to be, to be the main back until Ashton Jeanty is healthy. But if it's a situation where he's out longer than that, it does change your outlook of the season drastically. Because one, you most likely, if he's out for a longer period of time, which people don't, it doesn't seem like he will be. It changes how you manage your running back room. I think whether they bring someone else in, I also too is like that's the bread and butter of this offense. This is what they want to do. They want to run the ball a ton this year, and part of that, their optimism to be able to have a successful run game is because of Ashton Jeanty and what he can do, back there. And then you mix in Mike Washington. There is the run game looks a lot better when it's Ashton Jeanty and Mike Washington. But if Mike Washington has to carry the load for 3 weeks, I think the Raiders should be fine. But if it's longer, then if it's longer, then there should be a lot of concerns.
Yeah, I agree. And where do you think this – because you're not going to replace singularly, I don't think anyway, Ashton Jeanty, especially when you add the pass game element to it. What do you think this changes maybe for Dylan Laube just in terms of that role, maybe letting Mike be the runner type of a guy and Dylan Laube come in as a third down back or a change of pace guy that's able to catch the ball out of the backfield?
Yeah, I think Dylan Laube came. He's only had, I believe, only 9 career rushing yards so far. So they're going to ask a lot out of him. I think it will be a situation where you might see him get a few more carries. But I think I really think if the Raiders believe Ashton Jeanty is going to miss a significant amount of time, I think they'll probably go out and get somebody to kind of like help for the time being. I know they got Dyer, they got Roman Hemi at the moment. We'll see if he cracks the 53-man roster or ends up being someone who is a practice squad candidate. But I think at the moment it looks like Dylan Laube has a chance to create a role for himself as an RB2. But it's an interesting dynamic. I know, like, either way, if you ask him his time, and which it looks like he most likely will, you're going to see Mike Washington get the boatload of carries.
What do you think Mike Washington Jr. does the best? I mean, we've seen him do several different things on the field and being asked to do different things. What do you think is his primary asset to this offense?
I think he brings a lot of speed. He brings a lot of size, and you see that speed and size come into play whenever he's on those outside zone runs or those gap runs, and he's able to burst down the field. And from some pretty big games. So far, he's shown that big playability in the backfield, which they need. You already have Ashton Jeanty. Ashton Jeanty has shown us last year at times that he has that big playability. So Mike Washington. You have two guys that have that big playability in terms of making like pretty big runs if they are given the open lane to do so. So yeah, I think Mike Washington has proven to us time and time again throughout training camp and the preseason that he deserves to play some meaningful snaps as a rookie. And even when Ashton Jeanty was healthy, right, you still hope that Kubiak and the coaches that created a role for him as kind of like a 1-2 punch. But now he probably has no choice where he's going to be thrust into a bigger role than probably expected out the gate. And like I said, I think from what we've seen in the practices in training camp practices and preseason, I think he has a skill set to fill that void for the time being.
Yeah, Ryan, Mike Washington maybe easing some of that concern with Ashton Jeanty, but I don't know if the same can be said about the wide receiver room, right? We heard Clint Kubiak basically put that position group on blast last week, talking about how they took a step back against Houston. My question to you is what's the fix, right? Because number one receivers aren't just going to pop up out of the blue when roster cutdown day comes this weekend. So what is the fix for the Raiders? Is it the talent in the room? Is this on now Clint Kubiak to scheme it up differently, better, etc.? Where do you think the fix comes for this wide receiver group?
It's tough, right? I've been debating about this for the longest time because it's like you look at a situation. Do they go out and get somebody? Like they're going to have two, I believe they have 2 open roster spots at the moment. So they're probably going to have some more. They're probably going to have some other open room after a roster cut down. So do you just go out and sign somebody? Do you trade somebody to kind of help fill that void? You know, you like Malik Benson, but I still think, you know, being a 6th-round pick, that is a tall task for a rookie to come out as that's a tall task for a rookie drafted late in the round to come in and be a significant contributor. So you're hoping that Malik Benson can kind of be that wide receiver 3, maybe Jack Bash. But I think the fix to this, and I think you're probably going to have to rely heavily, like, you know, you already knew they're going to rely heavily on Brock Bowers. But I think it makes Michael Mayer's role even more important, because that's another guy we've seen throughout training camp that has been a solid pass catcher and someone that Cousins can rely on, and even Mendoza at times, right? So I think that's probably the best way to do it moving forward. Like, you rely on your 2 guys, Naylor and Tucker, and just play a bunch of 2 tight end sets, and hopefully Michael Mayer can actually live up to that, to the potential that everyone thought he would be coming in when he was drafted a couple of seasons ago. So yeah, it's hard. Like, I don't think you're going to get an immediate fix this year. I think it's going to be a situation where you hope that you're at some position in the draft of 2027. I hate to look that far, but it could be a situation like that where you're going to have to wait until the off season to try to make a big swing at bringing in a wide receiver to this roster, whether it's through the draft or even trying to make a big name signing next year.
Ryan, we've been talking about how with the way the roster was shaping up coming into the offseason and the draft, it was impossible for the Raiders to get to everything, wide receiver being one of them, and they made some hard decisions along the way and addressed some other positions, one of which was the secondary. You know, you bring in Treydan Stukes, you bring in Jamad McCoy, you bring in Massis, you bring in Dalton Johnson, and to varying degrees, all 4 have flashed. And so when you think about what we saw in Houston in that game for that young secondary, did you see progress from preseason game 1 and preseason game 2 for those guys?
I think I agree with you. I think all those guys have flashed. You see let's stick with Treydan Stukes for a moment. Like, we've seen him after Houston, and I thought he had, I think it was like 4 tackles, including 1 for loss. We saw yesterday he got a lot of the first team reps. I think almost all of the first team reps during training camp practice. You know, they mixed in. You know, there were certain practices where they had pull him out there with Chin and Stukes, but Stukes most of the time was with the ones. So that, to me, I think that could be a sign that the coaching staff is seeing him being more comfortable. He's becoming more confident in what they're asking him to do. I think Jamal McCoy, I thought he had a much better performance outside of the penalty compared to the preseason opener. Same with Hezekiah Mass. So I like the upside there. I think my concern is this, and I've written about this. It's like, you see the potential, but will that potential be able to translate in year 1? And that's what I'm concerned about, because they're going to, you look at that schedule, they're going to face some pretty good pass catchers over the course of this year. You know, you got Jackson Smith-Njigba, you got DJ Moore out of Buffalo. There's a handful of guys I'm not even naming that they're going to have to deal with. Go with the Rams, Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, right? It's a lot of guys that they're going to be tested. So I'm going to reserve judgment in terms of what they're going to do year 1, but do I think the long-term outlook for that group is good? I think so. It's just like, will that potential translate to this year? And I think, let's say for someone, Jamal McCoy, that's a lot to ask for, right? After he hasn't played football in 2 years.
When you think about guys who are kind of rounding out the DB room, what can you say about what you've been able to see from camp, practice, and the preseason games for somebody like Greedy Vance?
I think Greedy Vance is on that bubble. I think it wouldn't be surprising that he cracks it. Someone who could add depth in that nickel role. We've seen him either play the nickel. We've seen him play safety quite a time. So he has shown that versatility. We've seen him make plays on the ball. I believe he picked off Fernando Mendoza twice. So he has had a solid. He's been productive during camp. We'll see if that earns him a roster spot, initial 53-man roster. But he certainly has made a case for that.
It's Ryan McFadden of ESPN. Ryan McFadden _ on the X. Ryan, so let's start looking ahead to Thursday. I know Clint Kubiak's going to talk later today, but how would you approach Thursday? considering the starters didn't play in Houston, JPJ was hurt, didn't play that Houston week, how do you go about who plays, who doesn't, what you still need to see, the Ashton Jeanty injury? How differently do you approach Thursday now based on what's happened the last couple days?
I'll probably if I'm calling any guy who I think is going to play, who I think is a projected starter, even behind them, is probably not going to suit up, right? I think you still want to see your rookies. I'm on the fence. So do you let Mendoza still get those reps, or do you play him? You don't play him as much as you have in the last 2 games, and you just let Aidan O'Connell, and maybe we finally get to see Jacob Clark get some snaps out there in this final preseason game. But I'm interested to see how Kubiak plays this out. You know, I doubt we see Kirk Cousins out there. I doubt we see Max Crosby. Well, he already said we won't see Max Crosby. Naylor, Tucker, you probably won't see out there either. I think you got out there seeing Jeanty go down, and I guess the prayer circle they had after he went down seemed to work, because the injury's not going to be as big. But still, you want to be cautious, because you look at this team and you look at the depth. Like someone like a Jeanty, someone like a Brower, like you remove them out the picture, the whole outlook of your season and your offense has changed. So you kind of want to be cautious there. And I wonder, do you see Mike Washington go out there? If it's do you want to be careful with him? So I think you're going to see a handful of guys, sit out. I still think it's going to be an opportunity for guys like Kieran, maybe Stukes, to get out there and get a few snaps. I'm just interested to see how they play out with the quarterbacks, especially with Mendoza. And have they seen enough in the preseason out of Mendoza that makes them confident going into the regular season, and we just see the majority of Aidan O'Connell in this game.
Vinny, 1 second. Ryan, rapid fire, okay? I'm going to give you 4 names. You give me a yes or no if you would play them, okay? Thursday.
Okay.
Fernando Mendoza.
I'm going to sound crazy. I'm going to say no.
Mike Washington Jr.
No.
Caleb Rogers.
Yes.
Jackson Powers Johnson.
No.
Interesting. Go ahead, Vinny. I just wanted to get that because I'm fascinated to see, because there's a lot of different ways Clint Kubiak can go, right, Vinny? Like in terms of how they go, and I think the offensive line plays into Fernando as well.
Oh yes, most definitely. I think the offensive line plays into that, and the expectation is there. Like Kirk Cousins is your guy for the time being, but at the same time, it's Mendoza's your number 1 pick, and if something goes wrong, he's probably the next guy up there. So that's why I said I picked no, because I don't. We saw how the offensive line was at times in Houston, and do I want to throw him out there again? And he's getting pressured a ton. So yeah, that's why I said I will hold him back. I think I've seen enough. And if he does go out there, which it wouldn't be surprising there as well, because Kubiak did say he's going to get a lot of reps in the preseason. I don't think it's going to be the same as we saw the last 2 games. I don't think it's going to be a situation where he's playing a whole he's playing a whole half or going into the second half. I think it'd probably be, maybe if he is out there, maybe a drive or 2, and that's it.
Well, we're going to hear from Clint Kubiak a little bit later today, so hopefully we'll get some answers on that. But, you mentioned, Ryan, the wide receivers that the Raiders are going to face and the formidable wide receivers that they're going to face. They're also going to face some really formidable pass rushers when you're talking about the Rams, when you're talking about, the 49ers, the Seattle Seahawks, the Chargers have a nice pass rush. So they're going to have their hands full of Chiefs with some really good, formidable defensive lines. As you look at the Raiders' offensive line, and we just mentioned Caleb, and we just mentioned Jackson Powers Johnson. But as a group, that starting 5.5, whatever you want to call it, what's been your sense of the progress that offensive line has made this year, and how comfortable are you with that offensive line protecting whether it's Kirk Cousins or Fernando Mendoza?
I'm a little bit comfortable because you get Tyler Linderbaum in there, and you got Colton Miller in there. I'm still on the fence with DJ Glaze. I think DJ Glaze has his moments at times, but my biggest concern is when they start playing some really big, some high power defenses, right? Like you said, you got Seattle, you got LA, you got Denver twice, right? Like I feel like that's going to be a challenge, right? And how he's going to handle with those pass rushers is. And I always tell people this: like we have to report what we see at practice. And that necessarily don't mean that's going to translate in the actual game where the competition is a lot bigger. A lot better. And there's been times where, like, you've seen DJ Glaze match with Max Crosby, and as it always is, Max Crosby is constantly getting the upper hand too. So that kind of like raises the concern is how is DJ going to translate against much tougher competition during the regular season? And it's going to be interesting to see, can like better coaching lead to a better production from DJ in year 3. To me, I feel like when it comes to DJ, like he is their best option, just given the fact of his experience. And Kubiak talked about it before, having continuity at both tackle spots, which gives him the edge in that degree going into the training camp, and has remained the same so far. And Charles Grant, we've seen him play mostly at left tackle. We haven't seen him move at right tackle like we saw during OTA. So, like, I'm a little bit optimistic about the offensive line just because you got guys back healthy, but I'm still like I got to see how DJ Glaze look against tougher competition, and so far that's where I'm on the fence about.
Ryan, who are the guys on the bubble on either side of the ball, or even for special teams, that you feel could make the final spots of this roster?
I think you go back to Greedy Vance. I think you look at like someone like a Tristan McCullum. I'm interested to see how they play with how Jordan Meredith, someone of those roster bubble guys, Jordan Meredith, because if Jackson Parrott-Johnson is your guy, the guy behind Jackson Parrott-Johnson is Caleb Rogers, and then we see Trey June, he's getting work at all over the offensive line, whether it's center, tackle spots, at guard. So you wonder where's like, how does that change? How do they view Jordan Meredith if we start JPJ? So we already feel comfortable with our backup in Caleb Rogers, and now we have a guy and a rookie who can play anywhere in the offensive line. So I wonder how much does that change their viewpoint of Jordan Meredith. So that's another guy I'll put on that bubble spot as well. You go back to the quarterback situation, right? Aiden O'Connell. Do they keep two or three quarterbacks? I think in a situation where to me this game against San Francisco is going to be big for Aiden O'Connell to potentially improve his trade value in case they do want to move on. Because you see teams like Miami, teams like Detroit, maybe you want to throw the Atlanta Falcons out there who might want another quarterback in their room with starting experience that Aiden O'Connell has, and who has looked solid at times during training camp and preseason. So those are names just off the top of my head that I kind of view as kind of like those roster bubble guys.
It's Ryan McFadden of ESPN. Ryan, last one. We'll let you out on this one. Are we going to see Jacob Clark Thursday? You alluded to it. Are we actually going to see him?
I hope so.
The mystery continues.
Follow him on the X at Ryan McFadden _Ryan. We'll see you at practice today. We appreciate you as always. But he is back in our ears and our hearts. Jason Fitz, Grammy winner, Yahoo Sports, UNLV, Raider Nation. Fitzy, we're going to get to football here in a second. Welcome back, brother. How are you?
How are we feeling, Raider Nation? I am great. I am better than I deserve. I am spectacular, man. And look, I'm going to say this a lot just because I love using this platform to remind everybody 35 days ago, 36 days ago, I was strapped to a table and sawed open. I got a big old scar to prove it for a double bypass open heart surgery that I was completely asymptomatic for. So go get blood work, guys. Go get blood work. Get your lipoprotein score checked, your cardio calcium score checked. Those are the only two numbers that were weird. I was completely asymptomatic. I spent over a year fighting for it, and finally I found doctors that were willing to look into what was wrong, and it turns out it's a miracle I didn't have the Widowmaker. It's a miracle I'm here. And yesterday I walked over 10 miles. I've been cleared for sprints and stairs. I'm back in the gym. Let's go. Every day gets a little easier. First few days were awful, but I'm an open book on this. Hit me up. Hit me on social media. Ask your questions at Jason Fitz. I want if anything comes for this, if just one person goes get blood work done and finds out that they had a problem like I did, it could save a life. So there's got to be a bigger purpose for it. I am great, and I am excited to be back with you boys.
Well, Fitz, we are ecstatic that you are back. Happy to know you're doing well. I am curious though. What has the recovery been like? You said 10 miles yesterday. What?
Yeah. So
is that a slow build? I hope.
But no. Well, look, you know me. I don't do anything half-assed. No, so. I had the surgery on July 20th, which was a Monday. On Friday, they sent me home from the hospital. So I was in the hospital for 5 days. Friday, they sent me home. And no exaggeration, on Friday, all I could do was shuffle my feet. I couldn't take full steps. And every breath, because of the way the surgery went and the tubes that they'd put in for drainage and everything, every breath felt like I was having an asthma attack and a heart attack at the same time. And that first day, I looked outside my window in my house, and I said, I'm going to make it to that driveway. There's this driveway that's right across the street. I'm going to make it to that driveway 3 times today. So the first day home on a Friday, I walked less than 1,000 steps. But it was all I could do. I'd walk that, and then I'd just collapse inside the house and sleep for 3 hours. I was that tired. And within a week, those less than 1,000 steps got to 10,000 steps. Within a week after that, 10,000 got to 15, and now I'm consistently well over 20,000 steps a day. So I get up early. I was out of work for 3 weeks. I hoped it'd only be 2, but I'm not Iron Man. I needed an extra week. But I get up, I walk before work, I walk during my meetings after work, and I walk when the sun's setting. And each of those walks takes me 45 minutes to an hour, and sometimes I got to sit down, and sometimes I got to catch my breath. But my goal is to get my lungs and my heart to pump and get up. So, it's a matter of how hard I'm willing to push every day. So every day gets a little bit better, damn it, one way or the other. Every day, one step further, and that's been the methodology.
All right. So as somebody that's dealt with things in his life, my family always deals with things with humor, right? So I'm going to ask this question, and hopefully it's digested in the right way. All right. So nothing's going to test it more than an NFL season involving your favorite team, and your favorite team just happens to be the Raiders, and the Raiders have been known to put the old ticker to the test. So having said that, and I know that while you're rehabbing, you've been keeping an eye on your favorite team, the Raiders. How excited are you about the season and about obviously the ups and downs and whatever stress that's going to put on the old ticker this year?
The funny thing is, and you're right, Vinny, like all of us, it's funny, like escapism comes from watching my favorite football team. And we've all had all eyes on Fernando. I think I've rewatched these Fernando snaps 50 times already at this point. And it's funny because I think what we're seeing is somebody that's ready to play. And I don't mean that has to be week one. I know everybody's like, well, week one. What I'm seeing is somebody that's not overwhelmed by the moment. I'm seeing somebody that's standing in a pocket, that's taking hits, that's reshuffling his feet, that's resetting his feet, that's going through progressions, going through reads. Like, y'all are watching the same thing. There's not been a single time that I have watched Fernando and I've thought, wow, this is too much for him. And I'll be honest with you, I have watched enough of Cam Ward to see moments, even last year, where I looked around and I'm like, man, he seems overwhelmed, right? Like, we all watched Bryce Young, who I've talked to a couple of Carolina Panthers people in the last, one teammate of Bryce's in the last couple of months, trying to get a sense of rookie quarterbacks. And it's like, well, man, sometimes they just had to shut him down because it was all so overwhelming. And, like, I keep looking for the overwhelmed moment, and I haven't seen it. Now, that doesn't mean that he has to play week 1 or he has to play week 6, or we're all trying to figure out what that target looks like. What that means is that Fernando, to me, seems like he's going to meet the moment wherever the moment is. That, to me, is the most exciting thing that happens this season. Then you factor in, on top of that, we've all seen that Washington has looked really good running. We're all happy that Ashton looks like he's going to be okay long-term. I think there are pieces of this team that are going to be up and down. It's a young secondary. It's an offensive line that's still going to need some time together. But I keep looking at this saying this season is about a foundation for the next 15 years. And that foundation, like, if we're laying the foundation of the house, it's all about Fernando. I'm more excited today about Fernando Mendoza than I was the day he got drafted.
All right, then when you're looking at it from afar and you're taking a look at how Clint Kubiak has been able to put his own imprint on this team and his influence, what have you noticed what's different from this year to previous years?
It's interesting because you can see, I think, watching this team, that there's a lot of information still being processed, right? And so you guys see it in practice every day. I'm not going to pretend I'm there in practice to see it, but everybody's been freaking out about the defense, which obviously has had some down moments in the preseason so far. But what I see are a bunch of young guys that are thinking. And even on offense, when you look at how much movement and motion is happening, how much they're going to end up cycling guys around, the way they're using 2 tight ends. I had one buddy that did go and do some writing on training camp that texted me afterwards, and he said, man, 2 tight ends for this team is going to be a problem for the rest of the league. So I think that those are things from identity we're going to see straight out of the gates in week 1. We're going to see formations. We're going to see the skies. We're going to see getting guys open. One part, and we all agree, and Coach has made it clear, this wide receiver room isn't good enough. Well, when the wide receiver room isn't playing at the level that they want them to play at, I think it puts more onus on the coaches. Can you scheme that guy open? I think Kubiak's going to manufacture catches for a room that needs help getting them manufactured. I think those are the identity things we're going to see early on from him.
This is Jason Fitz of Yahoo Sports back with us here on the Morning Tailgate, RaiderNation Radio 920. All right, the softballs are over. Time for the high heat, the cheddar. Coming your way, Fitzy. Uh-oh. Yeah, we're talking offensive line. What's a bigger organizational win in your opinion? Caleb Rogers coming up and winning the right guard spot, or Jackson Powers-Johnson solidifying that spot and not letting go?
You know what? So I don't want to cheat the answer. That's a great one. At this point, I will say this. I got to be consistent. And one thing that I have said loudly in my national work on Shedeur Sanders is you now have 2 coaching staffs that have had the opportunity with an easy off-ramp to say, hey, we're giving this job to Shedeur, and 2 coaching staffs haven't, right? So I do think that when you see multiple staffs in the room, look at somebody and say, man, it's not clicking. Then there is something not clicking about that. I am one that from the day that JPJ was drafted, I praised it. My buddies that play offensive line all said, yeah, look at some of the great things he does. At this point, the biggest win for the Raiders I'm not cheating your question, but the biggest win is to get 5 and keep 5 on the field so that this offensive line can finally get time on task together. So the biggest win in my mind is that one of these guys goes out and takes the job, right? And right now, I think I feel a heck of a lot better about Caleb taking that job than JPJ, just because Caleb continues to have an upward trajectory and JPJ continues to have, I would say, to be kind, a weird trajectory, right? So to me, yes, we can all look at it. Some coaching staffs do a better job of development than others. We can all look at it and start questioning whatever was going on in the building last year. But now you have a second group of people in, you have a second grouping of people in that have the opportunity to make this easy, and it still isn't. Now, maybe that's a little bit on the player, and the player just sort of getting comfortable in this league. I've watched the NFL, the pressure cooker of the NFL, change people and their ability to just handle the mental aspect of it. I don't know if this competition is great for JPJ or if it's not. What I do know is that what the Raiders need, what this team needs more than anything in the world, in my opinion, is a non-revolving door of 5 guys that are going to spend the next 3 years playing the majority of their football together. That is, when you start to look at what made the Eagles a couple of years ago so stinking good, it had so little to do with Saquon and so little to do with the rest of that passing offense and so much to do with the 5 fat guys in front having time on task together. I think the most important thing here is that they get the guy that is going to be the guy and we stop hunting for the guy. So especially because, Colton's not a spring chicken. So at some point, no offense to Colton, but at some point, they're going to have to start addressing left tackle again, too. What I don't want to do is spend this year with the revolving door, go into next offseason, and now it's like, well, got to figure out left tackle, got to figure out right tackle, got to figure out guard position. Then we're back in the same situation we've been in. So what we need are for guys to step up and win the job and keep the job. And that is, JPJ's been given every opportunity. If he's not on the field, there has to be a reason, and I refuse to believe that a second coaching staff is just awful at what they do. So I'm going to give benefit of the doubt to the new people in the room.
It's interesting when you look across the league how relative what constitutes a successful season for a team is. I mean, it's extremely relative in Buffalo and with the Los Angeles Rams compared to some other teams like the Tennessee Titans or a team like that. So when it comes to the Raiders and realistic expectations of what constitutes a success, Have you analyzed, rectified, coped, whatever the case might be, within your own fandom and in your own head on what you are looking for in terms of defining this season as a success for the Raiders?
There was a moment, yes, to answer your question, yes. There was a moment in Derek Carr's rookie year that we all remember when they were 0-10 and they were taking on Kansas City. And I'll never forget my dogs absolutely just losing their minds because I was losing my mind that the Raiders finally won a game that year. They were 1-10. And I remember social media just destroying me for celebrating that moment. And I kept saying, I was like, it's not about the win-loss record. It's about trying to figure out if you have foundational pieces for the future, right? That's just so much of, and I'm consistent. You know, I lived in Nashville for 20 plus years, and I've done radio in Nashville for a long time. And when Cam Ward was drafted, I was on their number one radio station, and they kept saying, what is success for the Titans? And I said, success for the Titans is going into next year knowing you got your guy for the next 15. And you know what they don't know in Nashville, being honest? They don't know if they have their guy. The fans don't know. The media doesn't know. The people covering the team don't know. Nobody knows if Cam Ward's the answer. To me, success for this team is not about a win-loss record. I think it's probably a 6-win team that looks really competitive. That's sort of my internal expectation as a fan. There's a 6-win team that feels like it has closed the gap between where the best of the best are and where they are. That's what I think feels right. But I'll say, above and beyond all of that, what really feels like success to me is when we're sitting here in November, December, and we're watching and we're like, yep, we got that guy. We got that. Yeah, he needs pieces. He needs help. Like, I see everybody. I saw social media yesterday trying to tell me that the Raiders should have been aggressive in acquiring Kayshon Boutte. And I just want to remind you that the Patriots thought so little of Boutte that they went out and did anything they could to get anybody else and let him go for pennies on the dollar because he's not a good enough wide receiver. We're so thirsty for it as a fan base. We want it all in 1 year. I don't think it comes in 1 year. I think next year, you know, I'm looking around saying I think success for this team is we're sitting here in December and we're saying I can't wait to see what else they do to build around Fernando Mendoza because we got our guy. We finally got our guy who can compete with, you know, the best of the best. In this division, you won't win football games long term. You can win for a year. We've all seen the Raiders win 1 year here and there. But if you want to not suck long term, you've got to have a coach that can compete with the best coaches the league has ever seen, and you've got to have a quarterback that can compete with the best quarterback. I am one of the best quarterbacks this league has ever seen. That's the way you get there. So to me, success for this team is we're sitting there at the end of the year saying, you know what? We got a little ways to go, but we definitely got our coach. And we definitely got our quarterback. And now all of a sudden, look out, Chargers, look out, Broncos, look out, Chiefs. We are legitimately about to make a run for the playoffs for the next 10 years. That's what I think is there for the Raiders. If Fernando Mendoza is showing us that he is still meeting the moment when we're talking about November and December.
All right. Excluding Ashton Jeanty, is there an area of concern for you as you start approaching week 1 against Miami?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just going to have to be patient with the secondary. If there's anything we've learned, and I'm victim of it too, I really like a lot of the talent. And so I came into the first game, and I'm like, oh, let's see what it looks like. And then you step back, you're like, okay, now we got to understand they're not really scheming this up. They're asking guys to do a lot of different things. I think there are a lot of reasons why we're sitting here saying, man, why'd you give cushion there? I was watching the broadcast, and one of the guys was saying, well, I'd like to see him play, further up here. I'd like to see him play more impressed. And all I kept thinking is, well, I'm sure the team wanted that too, but we just got to teach these guys. Like, it's just young guys in a new system. So I think the first 6 weeks is about guys trying to figure out what that looks like. We're going to see a lot of miscommunication. I will remind everybody, the great Charles Woodson got burned in his first game a couple of times on Monday Night Football. We all watched it. So, a little patience goes a long way. I think the corners, the safeties are going to have to figure each other out in this defense in the first month. That's my biggest concern. I will also say to that end, I have the least concern about linebacker position that I've had in a generation about this football team. I am genuinely curious to see how much scheme changes when we get to the regular season and the way they impact the opposing quarterback, where pressure changes from where it's coming from, that will buy a little bit more time for the secondary to develop.
He's Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports. He may have been on the bench for a hot minute, but he has not lost that fastball in the slightest. 10 miles? Fitzy, you're an inspiration, and I mean that wholeheartedly. You are an inspiration, and I don't know how many have told you or replied to you, but you being so open and transparent with everything you've gone through is, I can only imagine it has helped many, more than one. That is for sure. We appreciate you as always for taking time, talking a little pigskin here on the morning tailgate, and hope to do it again very, very soon, my friend.
I cannot thank Raider Nation enough for the incredible support through all of this. That's why I love being a Raiders fan. Can't wait. We're going to kick the snot out of Miami in a couple of weeks. Let's go, boys.
Woo! Whoa, that's strong.
Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports Grammy winner, the best.
He's in fine form.
I know. I
can't wait to do my 10 miles.
It's crazy to say.
It's amazing.
Listening to him, you would never know. You would never know. He just went through major surgery.
Double bypass. And clots so thick they couldn't put a stent through.
35 days removed.
And he was on the field ready to do an IFL game to broadcast from the field as the sideline reporter, and he got the call about a half hour before the game began. Don't move. Get home immediately.
Vinny, did you hear what he said? Oh, I was going to take 2 weeks off. I had to take 3. Yeah, I would have taken a year off. Are you kidding me?
Shout out to the medical field and the technology field for really advancing. We talk about the great contribution that the Raiders made to the Children's Hospital. This is kind of what it's all about in a different way. But yeah, the advancements that we've made in technology and recovery, things that were thought to be impossible 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 25 years ago, whatever the case might be, are now possible. And that's because there's a lot of people that when we sit here talking about the Raiders and sports and NFL, and it is as Jason said, escapism, and we're happy to do it. But there's so much more important things going on, thankfully, that people way smarter than us are devoting their lives to, and saving lives as a result. So shout out to them.
Shout out to all. 702-365-9200. We'll get your final thoughts here on the final sit down on the Morning Tailgate, RaiderNation Radio 920. It is the final sit down here on the Morning Tailgate, RaiderNation Radio 920. Big thanks to all our guests on today's program: Jesse Merrick, Silver and Black Sports Network, Ryan McFadden of ESPN, Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports, and as always, you, Raider Nation. Clint Kubiak set to meet with the media after practice which is scheduled for around 11:40 or so. So make sure you stay with Flagship with the Silver and Black all day today. JT the Brick from 12 to 2. Unnecessary Roughness with Hugh Myers from 2 to 5. Bringing you the sounds from Clint Kubiak today. We will no doubt be reacting to what he has to say on tomorrow's edition of the Tailgate. Ashton Jeanty, plan for the starters or lack thereof. Thursday's preseason game, and just getting this final week of work in before roster cutdown this weekend. Couple more texts to get to before we say goodbye. Jimmy in Vancouver says, good morning, gentlemen. Good stuff as always. All three positions concern me. Wide receivers lead the way by a small margin. Secondary being the least concerning. Also, just a footnote, not sold on the place kicking.
Oh, yeah.
Jimmy in Vancouver on that one. Snakeman says, defensively, we'll need to be patient with a first-time DC and a very young secondary. That exonerates that side of the ball for now. Offensively, we have a proven offensive scheme and play caller, plus a relatively veteran O-line. However, we cannot run the rock. That will cascade, thus impacting QB and passing game. What did Trey Tucker say? He said, no block, no rock. And that's the message Coach Z, Zach Zani, giving his wide receivers. If you don't block in this system, you can't get the ball in the passing game. And it's not just that they can't get the ball. It's that you will not be able to execute that passing game if you can't run the ball in this offensive scheme. So, interesting take there, Vinny. That, with all the new and first years on defense, that kind of gives them a stay of execution, if you will, compared to the offense. Kubiak, Dennison, tried and true.
Yeah, and the whole thing with the wide receivers, you got to block to get the rock. That's not exclusive to. That is just, if you're going to be an NFL wide receiver, you've got to be able to block. And you know what, the Raiders wide receivers block pretty well. Good for them. I'm glad of that. Need to see more of that, more of them in the pass game. making their presence felt in the pass game. That's probably not going to happen, obviously, on Thursday, considering who's going to play. But very early on in this season, that's a big point of focus for me when you're talking about the offense. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. I think the quarterback's going to be able to throw the ball. Now, obviously, Brock Bowers is going to do his thing. I think Michael Mayer is going to be a good weapon, but they need some wide receivers to really step up. I'm not the one that's saying that. Clint Kubiak is saying that. We're seeing it. So a real big point of focus early on in the season is that wide receiver group.
15 seconds, 77 Raiders says, help me not panic. Why are we not making preseason trades? Go.
Oh,
relax. Relax.
There it is.
Yes, just relax. You're not trying to win the Super Bowl this year. I'm just being straight up right now. Just let things play out and keep rebuilding this roster the right way.
For Vinny Bonsignor, for Clay Baker, I'm Vince Sapienza. Thanks so much for joining us on the tailgate. Have a great day, everybody. We're back here on Raider Nation Radio 920 on the